Hey everyone, my name is Amar Payton, and I like listening to music. And what I recently have enjoyed listening to lately is 717NA's most recent project, Social Media Killed Love Part 2. Now, this was a very interesting project for me to listen to. I didn't really have any specific expectations as far as what an entire project from him would sound like going into this, just because I had never heard an entire project or album by him before. I heard about him because Little Limbo did a song on his prior project, the first version of Social Media Killed Love, on a song called Anti-666. But beyond that and a few singles, I hadn't heard a ton of 717NA. So listening to this was a very interesting experience. I'd say that this is definitely a very dark listen. If you're looking for, heavy sonically, songs to just bump in your car, with your Christian buddies for fun, this is not necessarily the album that's going to do it for you, because, oftentimes the songs that are most like that sonically, those are actually the songs that either have really, really dark messages, or they, have some explicit language that a lot of your friends probably aren't really going to appreciate very much. Neither of them nor your mom. So, listening to this was a very, very interesting experience. It was far darker than I expected it to be. It's the most suicidal Christian album I've ever heard, because we get to, hear a little bit of what's going on inside of 717NA's head. And, it's not the prettiest picture. Especially earlier on in the songs, we talk about him, his thoughts. He starts to feel somewhat, suicidal, wants to be dead. But then he's also kind of, battling, his thoughts of, what he wants to do, what his dreams are, what he wants to do, when he grows up. So it's very interesting. You get, the most substance out of that particular portion of his mindset, from the song Unmedicated, Medicated, Doesn't Matter, I Still Want to Die. So if you want to hear, that, really, really dark part of 717NA's psyche, that's definitely a song that I would recommend you guys check out. But as we go on throughout the rest of this album, there starts to be a trend. There's a lot of really heavy hitting beats and some good flows that more or less tend to, stay on the beats, and they hit pretty hard, which is good because, they should be hitting hard, for this genre of Christian trap metal. But one thing that I think was very disappointing is that a lot of the vocals were very, very muddy, unnecessarily so. Actually, one song that would have been my favorite song from the album had the vocals just not gone completely to crap halfway through the song, was My Suicide Note Makes My Life Seem Tolerable. The guitars were amazing. It has an amazing, just emotion to it, and just an incredible transference of a melancholy emotion that you just don't hear from a lot of Christian artists. Plus, you have some really nice, real, or at least real sounding acoustic drums that just kind of go into this, very raw and sad emotion that is just wonderfully transferred through this song. And despite the fact that, the vocals halfway through the song just get completely destroyed, quality-wise, it's still my second favorite song from the album, just because of how well that song was done. But, one thing about this genre too is that with trap metal, lyricism is not the main thing, I would argue. So the fact that some of the vocals are muddied, they kind of diminish enjoyability of the songs a little bit, but not so much to the part where the whole album is something that you can just throw away, because that's just not the case. It's still an enjoyable album. I would say that, there are some parts of the album that just feel like complete missteps. Towards the middle of the album, we have these 4 songs that are sort of clustered together, and they kind of feel like the 2 songs that come after the prior 2 songs just feel like almost better versions of the songs that came before, and kind of have me wondering why the earlier songs were included, considering the fact that they're so similar. It almost sounds like a complete rework and rewrite of the initial song. So for instance, Rage Pit is a far better version of Let Me Go. And All Black is I would argue, a slightly better version of You Have a New Guy and I'm Still Broken Alone. So there's a little bit of repetition towards the early middle part of the album. But as we go on farther down throughout the album, in general, just seems to get better and better. Nutcase was an absolute banger, featuring the artist Black, who, while his lyrics, yes, were very dark and gritty, and I didn't exactly appreciate everything that he was saying, you can hear him very clearly, which is helpful on this album. It kind of sets the tone for the rest of the features here. His flow is insane. His voice is so intense that it just like brings an insane energy that's very much needed on this track in order to meet the the crazily energetic and frenetic and frantic beat that's on this track. We also have, a couple other songs with features before we get to the final song on the album. We have Archangel featuring Odd Earthling, as well as, I guess, I Don't Care About Your Dollars. It's kind of hard to to translate what that acronym means, but that song is featuring Kill Slump. Those features weren't nearly as good as Black's, I would say, but it does kind of help add a little bit of diversity to his typical trap metal style, and I think that it kind of forces the sound to go a little bit out of 717 NA's, typical sound. And I think that was kind of helpful in keeping the album from just like falling into a pattern of sameness. You don't really get that feeling from this album, which, makes sense considering that it only has 12 songs on it. But, generally speaking, with every single one of these songs, there's something, slightly small to complain about it, whether that be the beat not particularly hitting as hard as you would like it to be, or just the beat just being noisy more so than energetic, such as the case with Let Me Go. Or, just the artist not particularly, either being exactly on beat or the vocals being somewhat muddied. While these are not really huge issues, and thankfully, they're not all compounding. So each song will pretty much only have one or two of these issues at a time. So these flaws are not anywhere near overbearing. With the final track on this album, the way he closes this album out with like a 96-second long song called Black Nails Through Your Ribcage, none of those problems are present at all. The lyrics are good. The writing is good. The flow works really, really, really well on that high energy beat. You can pretty much understand nearly everything that he's saying, which I can't say for the rest of the tracks on the album, of either him or his features. It's typically either one or the other. But that song just has such high energy. That's been one of my favorite songs that I've discovered this year, to be completely honest. Black Nails Through Your Ribcage is just, it absolutely blew my mind. I've never heard 717 NA reach such heights like these and I hope that he can get to the same level again. But yeah, in general, my thoughts on the album it's okay. It's fairly good. It's not the best album in the world, not the best indie Christian album in the world, but as my first foray into listening to an entire Christian trap metal album, it was enjoyable. It was enjoyable, and I'm glad that I listened to the album. Another thing too, before I close the review out, there are actually two hyperpop songs on the album. Well, actually 3 hyperpop songs. Well, I consider all Christian hyperpop songs Bible pop just because it is a different genre. Whenever you're in the Christian sphere, it's always going to be a little bit different, whether that's lyrically or sonically. There are going to be some differences. But the Bible pop songs that were on the album were a little bit underwhelming, I would say. I do think that the song that he did with Sharda, All Black, was really, really well done as far as, hyperpop and Bible pop is concerned. It's actually, I like it better than most Sharda songs, to be honest. I've never completely been able to 100% get behind the Bible pop sound, but it is something I'm trying to support through my Bible pop Spotify playlist, just because I think that, it's an emerging genre, up and coming. And I think that, Christians kind of should be innovating and moving into the sphere as the culture moves as well. But yeah, All Black was good, and it was actually one of the few, feel-good tracks on the album. So I really appreciated that. But in general, a lot of the Bible pop songs seemed more like attempts than bangers. Not to say that they were bad at all. They certainly weren't. They just seemed a little bit off kilter, which makes sense considering the fact that this is like his first foray into creating music of that genre. So that is completely understandable. But all in all, they're good songs, and I'm glad that they're included in here because, the Christian realm is really unnecessarily lacking in the Bible pop department. But yeah, that was pretty much my thoughts on the album. I'd give it around like a 7 out of 10. It's pretty good. Not insane, but it's still definitely an album that you should listen to if you have the time. My favorite song from the album is Black Nails Through Your Ribcage, in case you guys couldn't notice. And the song that I didn't like as much was Let Me Go. So avoid that song at all costs. It's definitely not a song that I would rush to tell everyone to listen to. But anyways, thanks guys for listening. Make sure you go and check out the artist. The main reason why I'm doing these reviews is just to provide these artists and provide this music a platform in like a place to be discovered. And also just for my friends to, know about the music that I'm listening to. So go check this out. It's on Spotify and Apple Music. It's called Social Media Killed Love Part 2. Let me know what you think.